Welcome everyone to the next in our series of webinars about Digimap. Today I would like to welcome Anna Estaroth, who is going to talk to us about her use of Roam in exploring the Central Highlands of Scotland. She's currently doing her PhD at the University of Highlands and Islands, and I think we'll leave it at saying you're doing your work on piles of stones, and I'll let you elaborate on that, Anna. I think that's easier. There we go. So as we've done previously with these Zoom events, it'd be really helpful if you could keep your microphone muted, please. That just helps to cut out any background noise that can sometimes interfere with what our speakers are saying. You will find at the bottom of your Zoom screen a chat facility. It's really helpful for us if you have questions, if you could type the questions into the chat function, and then we can go through them at the right moment. With lots of people here trying to have a conversation, gets quite noisy, quite tricky. So if we can put everything in the chat, that helps us to organise things a bit better. After the event, we will send you a link to a recording of this, so you will have seen already that this session is being recorded. We will also give you a copy of the transcript from the chat window. We will anonymise that, so we'll take everybody's names out. And any questions that we don't manage to get to in the session here, we will try to answer through the chat afterwards, and we'll send you a copy of that. Anna is going to talk to us for a little bit, and Anna, I think that's okay if you have time for a few questions afterwards. Is that okay? Lovely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And if we have time afterwards, my colleague Viv will do us a quick demonstration of historic Digimap, covering various bits and pieces afterwards if we have time. If we don't have time for that, there are recordings of how to use the different Roam and data download functions on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to catch up with any of those, then please do go and have a look.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be invited by Digimap to come here and talk to you about Digimap Roam. I absolutely adore Digimap Roam. It's a wonderful, easy to use system. Anyone can use it. There's lots of functions. I'm sure I haven't even learned all of them, but I'll share the ones that I have got. Now, I'm a skyscape archaeologist, which means I go to Standing Stone Circus. My colleague Ingrid took this photograph, and the very sharp-eyed amongst you will notice that there is a moon underneath the A in Digimap. And so the work I'm going to be talking about today all of the Clava cairns were inside this central region of Scotland, and I used this map in order to designate that territory. And they look like this. So I've got ring cairns and chambered cairns and standing stones and heaps of stones and a variety of other things. Well, what I'm also doing is that I'm considering that these early Bronze Age monuments, so I'm going along the highways. So I travelled along all these rivers and I'm measuring the southern horizon all the way along the rivers. And in order to show that to people, I could have just left the rivers in the map, but I decided it was much easier if I actually drew in the rivers so that they were highlighted and I could show them to people properly. And for instance, in this map, I'm explaining that you could, a little bit of porterage here, you can get along down the Spey all the way down to Ireland, because these were the primary routes up Loch Ness and up the Spey at the time. And one of the nice things about Digimaps is that it really is an easy system to use. So I'm drawing in the rivers, and I can make a mistake and I can simply take it out. It's really easy to take out mistakes that you make or to eliminate something that you've done. You just select what you've chosen and take it out. And this is the area that I was talking about, but I haven't annotated anything on this slide. Oh, sorry, I'm going backwards. I haven't annotated anything on that slide. This is the slide that I was using to show you where all of the cairns are that I was studying. So you can see the rivers are designated. It's easy to see them. I've put in all of the cairns, and I've used this map as part of a publication. So I got in touch with Edina and I asked them what was the correct wording for copyright. And this is the correct wording for the copyright for this particular map. And I also put in a map of Scotland with that little square in it that I showed you earlier in this area, because there aren't any cairns down here. And also that required separate copyright information, but Edina will always help you to get this right. So I've used this slide several times in different talks, but I was giving a lecture just last week, and it was to a bunch of early Bronze Age people. Bronze Age people are exploring this territory, so I had to make it a little bit more Bronze Agey for them. So I've included some information that they would be particularly keen to see. But I've really not changed the slide much. You can see it still gives the same amount of information. It tells you about all the different rivers and what's involved. And because I was talking to them, I decided I'd better show them a slide of other Bronze Age activity. These are late Bronze Age cairns primarily. There's a couple of crannogs and there's some standing stones. And I'm really just trying to explain what other monuments of various sorts there are in the region. And that was a bit messy. So I ended up with this slide for another lecture to another group of people. And these are the ones that I actually measured, that I went and measured each and every one of them, even though, for instance, the stone circle, we don't know its date. This is for a different audience. The audience aren't that interested in the Bronze Age, but it's explained. You can see that the River Findhorn has some, whereas it doesn't in the others. And that was part of my research as well. But that's the large scale. So that the other thing that Digimap does, this is delightful. You can zoom in closely. So I'm using this map to explain to people just how good a place it was to live in the old days. So we've got different kinds of cairns. They're all labeled. And we've got the kind of hut circles where people lived, the field systems. And that's the kind of cairn. These are late Bronze Age cairns that are in here in the picture. And so for my other publication, which is talking about the research that I did, I've given in all the roadside measurements that I've taken, I've labelled them and I've given them numbers. And I'm just zooming into one little section here by the River Bewley. You can see there's 3 Clava cairns. There's a late Bronze Age cairn and a Orkney Cromarty cairn. And this here designates what turned out to be a heap of stones. And there are always a heap of stones. This is really field clearance. But we stopped and investigated the heap of stones because I swear to you, it looks exactly like some of the others. And so we had a good look at it and explored what was going on there. And, oh, sorry, we've gone back. So that turned out to be a useful one. Oh, I do apologize. That turned out to be useful to designate that as a roadside measurement. It didn't turn out to be a cairn at all. But you have to measure these things. This is the River Nairn. There's all the measurements that we did along there. And I'm focusing in on the one area of this particular part of the valley. And I've measured, I used the measurement tool within Digimap to get the width of the valley and the length of the valley. And I've designated different elements in there, the different, because Clava cairns are 4,000 years old, and these other ones are only 3,000. So that, they're not primary of interest to me, but it's a very good tool for measuring the size and the shape of things. And you can see that for here, I've got the contours, which are really quite useful for telling me what the shape of the hill is likely to be. And I'm coming in even closer. So this is the Canmore's image, aerial image of that enclosure area, which is where the primary cairns are. And this area here, I've gone into historic Digimap because they designate that as there's a chapel. I knew there was a chapel, but there's an argument here that there were 2 stone circles, a chapel and a graveyard. So that was quite useful to be able to use historic maps for that. And then I'm looking at missing cairns. So I came along, I'm using my Ordnance Survey. I arrived here, the Ordnance Survey tells me there's cairns in this field. I wander around the field for ages looking for them. I didn't find any cairns. This isn't too surprising. Sometimes they're only a handful of stones in a particular shape. And then when I got home, I was able to look at the missing cairns in the image below, and they're really very small and they were incredibly overgrown, and I never found them. So I designated that as a roadside measurement as well, although I was aware of the fact that those cairns did exist. It's very difficult. They're almost certainly not Clava cairns anyway, so they weren't of primary interest. The other thing that coming in this close does, and here we've got Digimaps, this is Westray in Orkney. I'm looking at links of Noltland. This is Canmore's image, and I know it's an archaeological site that's been grassed over. I don't expect to see anything either from an aerial point of view or any other way to be able to tell me what's there. I just know there's an archaeological site underneath the grass. And then I came to another little mystery here. There's a lovely mystery with this one. Here is a cairn just outside Kingussie, and it's here on this map. When you go in, this is the larger scale. We go into a smaller scale, it's there. But when you go into a really small scale, it's vanished altogether. Now, I did go there. I spoke to the farmer. He told me they used to play there as children. And it looks literally, I swear to you, looks just like a tumulus. It's exactly the same as a late Bronze Age cairn, and yet it's not here. So a 4,000-year-old cairn ought to be in historic Digimap. So I designated that as a roadside measurement rather than a cairn. But you can see how useful it is to be able to zoom in and out. And I'm wanting to, these are results of some of that research, and I'm wanting to give this information in a kind of visual form. And this is how not to do it. So first of all, I tried this. I was using freehand buffers, and you can see that they're all different shapes and sizes. I'm trying to put too much information. It's messy. It isn't a really good way of designating that information. Neither is this. I tried this method where I've just designated summer and winter with yellow and blue, but there are only 3 that were unclear, and really it looks as if there's lots of them. So that wasn't a very good way of presenting the information, but this is a better way of presenting the information. So here I've used 5-kilometre buffers. I've designated a 5-kilometre buffer around each of the sites, gone in tight, put it exactly on the cairn, and I'm trying to demonstrate here that it's easy enough walking distance to go from one to the other. The group of people who built this one could go to that one for the summer and the other way around, that kind of thing. I'm aware of the fact that many of them have actually, historically, we know that some of these have been washed away in floods. So this is a map nobody else is ever going to see. You're the first people and the only people who are ever going to see this map. I'm doing this for Orkney. I'm really just trying to come at Orkney in a way that I can find out what there is, because the problem with Orkney is we've got Neolithic things, we've got Bronze Age, we've got late Bronze Age, we've got Vikings, we've got Iron Age, we've got a whole string of things. There's domestic settlements, there's ceremonial sites. And so for me, I just want to know where they all are. And that's never going to be used in a lecture or a talk or a document or a paper. But it is good for me to zoom in on. I can zoom in on certain sections. For instance, I'm particularly interested in what's happening at the Ness of Brodgar right now. And I might come in and use this form. So I've got different symbols explaining standing stones, the 2 domestic sites and the ceremonial sites are all designated there. And you can see it with aerial Digimap. The same sites are simply drawn in a different way. And I would use that in a slide to demonstrate something. And while I'm in Orkney, I'm also looking at places like Nap of Hower. So I'm using Digimap for that. And to, again, aerial Digimap allows me to compare the archaeological drawings and slides. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much. I will just stop sharing. How's that?
Thank you, Anna. That's fantastic. Fascinating stuff. I think we have a couple of questions. Actually, Anna, do you want to just share your slides again so that we can have some pretty pictures, because they're quite nice to look at. It might be useful to go backwards and forwards to your slides as well as the questions come in.
Fine.
I have one question myself, if that's okay, if nobody minds me starting. I'm very interested to see you finding something on the map and then going to look for it on the ground. And clearly these things are ancient, and therefore there will be plenty of opportunity for them to have been mapped and then to have been dismantled or destroyed since the map was made. But to what extent do you think there are things on the map that shouldn't be there and things not on the map that should? Do you sense this is a big issue?
Well, yes, that was my issue about it was because the bit at Tirnagroat, it's got it says ancient cairn in ancient writing, so it designates that as an ancient cairn. There is in fact a heap of stones there, and the heap of stones there looks better than many other heaps of stones that I can tell you that I know are early or late Bronze Age cairns. Some of them are really, they really are, they're difficult to find, some of them, because they've disintegrated. They've had the stones have been stolen from them, primarily during the Victorian age of putting up railways.
Right.
So the historic digimaps are particularly useful for that. But by the time we get to those historic maps, most of the railways have been created and they've stolen most of the material.
Yeah.
The archaeologists have argued that really that's when most of the material was taken from, and really prior to that people tended to leave them alone. But it is intriguing. I've never really understood what happened at Tirnagroat. There is something there. It looks like late Bronze Age cairn. It has all of the hallmarks. It's of having it's a shape where if there was an internal chamber, it would collapse and you end up with a dip in the top. That's classic shape. Yep. But it doesn't appear on modern maps, and it doesn't appear on the historic map either. So I've come to the conclusion that it could just be a heap of stones.
Well, to what extent do you think that the surveyors who are creating the maps actually don't recognize what they're looking at?
Oh, I think you're quite right. The surveyor who put the map in and put the word cairn in, at some point somebody did that, and there is something that looks exactly like a cairn there, and it's quite appropriate, and in the exact space it is correctly marked. So I think but it's not in the historical record. When you look at the archaeologists who have studied all the different cairns, that particular one doesn't appear.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Certainly for the historic maps, we know that the county series, of course, were all created by different teams of surveyors. So there's no consistency in any one person's opinion as to what gets marked and what doesn't. They are, to some extent, a little bit arbitrary, I suppose. But it's interesting to know what the expert view is. You know, if your archaeologists have done all the work on what's actually there and how much of it is reflected in the map and vice versa. Interesting. Thank you. That's great. We've got another question here. Let's start from the top. You mentioned copyright. Is there a charge for reproducing the maps in educational publications? Also interested in cost implications for using them on an educational blog post or restrictions in presentations that are recorded and put online. I think I can answer that one actually. Harriet, for anything educational, whether it is a printed publication or an online publication, there is no charge. That's okay. If you are doing something for reimbursement funds, whatever, then it starts to get a little grayer. It's probably useful to come and talk to us about any particular situation if you have any concerns about it. But if it's an educational publication and it's done under the guise of your subscribing institution, it should be fine and there's no extra charge. Second question, once a location is symbolized, does this carry through to all the different scales and dates of maps?
Well, yes, it does, in the sense that, you know, when I showed you the big map of Orkney with everything, all the mess of different things in there, and when you shrink in, they're all there in the, in fact, to put them in, you need to go into the smaller size to get them on an accurate spot.
Yes. Viv, I think maybe we could demonstrate this when you do your wee demo in a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's keep going. Another question, Anna, how useful do you find the OS name books in working out what people thought they were looking at?
Oh, I've never used OS name books. Do tell.
There you go. Now, I don't know much about the OS name books either, but the people to talk to, I think, are probably the Charles Close Society. And as far as I'm aware, because I looked this up quite recently, these books are quite hard to find. They are reference books that go with the original county series maps. And our questioner, Harriet, says that she can answer too. Maybe, Harriet, we can put you in touch with Anna and you can correspond and come up with the answer to the question. They're digitised on Scotland's places. There you go. Yes, that would be great. Actually, Harriet, could you write us an answer and we will share it with this group? You could either write it there in the chat, or if you want to email it to us separately, we'll add it to the transcript when we send it out. That's probably useful. Right, okay. If we have any other, thank you, Harriet. That would be really good. If we've no other questions, shall we move on to Viv's demo, and then Viv, you can show the zooming in and zooming out so the symbols stay in the same place.
No problem. I'll just quickly put these slides up just to go through the essentials for those that aren't familiar with Roam. So Roam is our mapping application. So there's a separate Roam for each Digimap collection, for OS, for historic, and so on. The features available vary slightly between collections, because they're each designed to suit the particular maps that you're viewing, but the layout and key functions are the same. So you're browsing maps, you can print them as PDF, PNG, you can do the things that Anna showed you, adding in drawings, markers, polygons, lines. You can view some overlays, and on this image here, which hopefully you can see fairly clearly, this is the overlays menu in the Ordnance Survey Roam. So you can choose to view, for example, contours, postcodes, and so on. The map window is where you view the maps, and we have a base maps button where you can select different maps at given scales. And then on the top, you've got your search, print, the ability to compare two maps, and so on. So I'm going to show you 3 different maps, hopefully. Example 1 is just a simple conference venue map. I'll show you that in Ordnance Survey Roam so that you can see a few of the functions which Anna was showing you. And then the second example, I'm going to show you how you can combine data from 2 Digimap collections. So this is in historic Roam, and I've brought in the Digimap Ordnance Survey master map, really detailed topographical current mapping data, so you can see them both together. And then in the third example, I'll show you how you can import your own data. So I've imported here a file of wind farm proposals, sourced from Scottish Natural Heritage. And then there's actually another method. You can add in a file of data in various formats. It could be as simple as a CSV, a spreadsheet with some points, but we accept several formats. Or you can add in external data from a web mapping service. So the second image here shows you that I've added in the same data on the wind farms, but using the Scottish Natural Heritage web map service, essentially a stream of their mapping data. Can you just confirm you can see my browser, Emma?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, super. Okay, so let's start with Ordnance Survey Roam. So the first one, the map I showed you, was just a conference venue map in York. So I can search up in the top left here with place names, postcodes, geographic coordinates, and I just select York from the results. Okay, so it's taken me into this view, this zoom level, and there's a little map information menu on the left here, and that tells me I'm looking at the 1 to 50,000 scale colour raster, and it was published in December 2020. This is the digital equivalent of your OS Land Ranger maps that you can purchase. So that's what I'm looking at this scale, but as I mentioned, in the base maps button, you can see what else is available at that scale, and there's 4 options here. Now I'm going to open another menu, the map content menu from the left-hand side, from the sidebar, and this is where, if it's possible, I'll be able to say, okay, show me the roads or show me the green spaces, but for this particular mapping product, I can't do that. It says this view has no layer selection. If I turn to raster 50K grayscale, it's the same. It's just the same product, but grayed out. However, if I select another one of these, Vector Map District, you can see this menu changes, and I've got some checkboxes. So this is where I can customize the features to an extent, and by, I could turn off B roads and minor roads. So that's something that you can, customize what you're viewing by looking at these. So that's a little bit of a tip, that always check the base maps and the map content together to see what's possible if you select a vector map, you're going to be able to customize what you see. So let's zoom in a little. I want to find York St John's. That was my venue on that sample map I showed you. Okay, and you can see that as I'm zooming in, these base maps change. Essentially, they're all different Ordnance Survey products. Some of them are openly available via OS Open Data, and some are licensed products, but they're all suitable for display at this scale, but they may just, they've got different cartographic representations. So you can choose the one that's suitable for your purposes. Let's zoom right in until we're looking at the OS master map. I'll go back to map info so you can see this OS master map, this one published August last year. So this is the most detailed mapping available of GB. So if I zoom in a little more, you can see this is my venue. On the map I showed you, I'd added in some drawings. So I would open up my drawing tools, and this is where Anna has made great use of these markers to add in all to symbolize her maps with the different cairns and Bronze Age things that she found. So it's very simple just to select a marker, select your point on the map. There's various options available there. What I want to show you is there's also a grid reference marker. So I'll pop one of those on as well. I think that's what I had added in on my map. There are various shape options as well. You can add in a polygon. I'll just show you how to do that. I'll quickly add in a freehand polygon, but there's a lot of other shapes available too. You can select your colours, both line and fill outline. And this is a freehand one, so I can just very roughly colour in that venue. What else did I add? I'll also show you can add in a little measurement option. There's a measurement tool, so I can add a measurement to a line or a polygon within these drawing tools. You can add in images as well. And there's also lots of select and delete options available here. Was that it? I think so. I think I'd chosen the line drawing option for my map. Oh, no, I haven't shown you the overlays. So I showed you in one image that we have some overlays. Now these do vary quite significantly between collections. We just choose the overlays that are most suitable for the maps that you're viewing. So the one I chose, well, I'll show you postcodes. So you can put on postcode overlays throughout GB. I won't turn on the contours one, that won't show up so well at this scale. But I'm putting on the points of interest one. So this is a point data set from Ordnance Survey. I'm going to open up this arrow here. So I'll show you that you can drill down a bit further and again, select which layers of the points of interest you want to show. So given this is a map of a conference venue, I might not want to show manufacturing and production, for example, or I don't know, public infrastructure. So you can turn the layers on and off as you wish there. We also have a little information tool at the top here. So this can be used on these points of interest. So if I select that and select one of these, it tells me it's a restaurant, it's a fish and chip shop near the venue. What is this one here? LSE tool hire, if that was of interest to you. So that's our feature information tool that you can use. I'll just show you the 2-up view. In fact, no, I'll show you that in historic Digimap. So that I think is pretty much my conference venue map. I'm going to hit the print button now just to quickly show you the print menu. So there's various options here. You can put in a title, you can select your format. I'll go for PDF. Your page size, I'll stick with A4 and I'll go for portrait. And you can choose whether to include your drawings, you can add national grid lines and a legend and so on. If you do add a legend, it's a separate legend of the actual Ordnance Survey data that you're viewing. It's not a legend, for your points or anything. You would have to add that yourself. So there's 2 previews at the top here. We're looking at the content preview, which shows me what it's going to look like. But the layout preview is really useful, because that shows you, okay, this shaded box, this is what the area your map is going to cover. So for me, I'm thinking actually, I'd quite like to show a bit more context around about my map. I want to show the Minster so that people can put the location in a bit more context. So there's a couple of ways I can do that. I can try I could change the page size to A3, but I ain't got an A3 printer. So I'm going to try and change the scale. You've got the option to change the print scale manually here. It just has to be within this range that's specified here. So I think that that scale suits me better because I can see the minster, so I think that's a more useful map. So all I would do there is generate print file, and I would get a PDF to download. So that is a quick run through of quite a few, I think, of the functions. I think what I'll do is add in a few more markers so that we can kind of illustrate what someone asked. I do not know why that's not opening. Here we are. Someone was asking about, do they remain constant? So let's just pop a few markers along there. I think that might be the city walls or something. And then if I zoom out a few times, you can see that, your symbols do remain and scale. Does that answer the question that was asked? Hopefully. Okay. So that is looking at Ordnance Survey. So what I wanted to do now, I think that's a pretty quick run through of most of the functions that we offer in almost all of the Roams. If I go into the historic Roam now, I'm just going to show you how you can, sorry, I beg your pardon, I need to go back a step to show you where you would source the web map service information. So let's say we want to view the Ordnance Survey current mapping data on a historic map. First, I would need to select Ordnance Survey and go to this Web Services button. So what this offers are web map services, which you can use both within other Digimap collections or within other software that you're using, whether that's perhaps CAD or GIS software. And you would be able to take these and stream the Ordnance Survey maps into your application. You would, of course, have to authenticate so that we know that you are a registered user. There are two options, however, saying that, one for licensed data. So yeah, you'd have to authenticate in order to access that. But there is one for open data, data that Ordnance Survey make more openly available. So that wouldn't, would you still be asked to authenticate for that one, Emma? Can you confirm?
No, I think the open data, oh, now you've got me stumped. I'm not sure. Yeah. I think that because they are both Digimap URLs, then yes, you would need to authenticate either way. The difference is what you can use the data for. So if it's licensed data, there are a defined range of purposes. If it's open data, you can use it for whatever you want, pretty much, as long as it's not illegal.
All right. So anyway, we would be interested in the licensed data because what I want to view is the US master map, the sort of detailed building outlines, and that is licensed data. So what you would do would be to right click on that link and just say copy link address. Go into historic and historic Roam. And where you'll find the web map service function is within the overlays menu. So we looked at overlays and we turned on points of interest. And within historic, there aren't any particular overlays to view, but you can add in an overlay. So what you would do once you've got your link is to select the top button, manually add web map service feed. Just simply paste it in there and say get layers. And then as you scroll down the box, it shows you all the layers of Ordnance Survey mapping data that are available. And that might look a bit overwhelming, but it's essentially all the maps that you were looking at within the Ordnance Survey Roam, just as you zoomed in and out. I'm going to close that box, and at this point you would just say add layers to map. I'll close that now because I already have this web map service in here. And I've got one turned on there, which I'll turn off. If I scroll down here, you can see I've got Digimap OS license, and I simply need to toggle on that button. And then when I'm at an appropriate scale, the data is going to be visible to me. So what I'm going to do now is just search for Milton Keynes, just to find somewhere where we'll see a pretty big contrast between the historic map and the current mapping. So, so this is where if I just zoom in a couple of times, this is what would now be central Milton Keynes or thereabouts. And so you can see we had our historic map, but you can see I've now actually got the OS master map visible there as well. So that's potentially useful functionality. And I've chosen this example because I feel this kind of illustrates the usefulness best, but you can, of course, do the same with other collections as well. While we're in historic Digimap, I'll show you another function. We're looking at an 1880s map here. And if I turn on, I'll close this sidebar so we can see more map. And then I'll switch on the 2-up view. So what this allows me to do is do a comparison between decades. The historical maps are displayed by the decade of publication. So I've got 1880s on the left, and I could choose 1940s on the right. Now you will quite frequently see this message that there isn't a historical map at that scale for that decade, because of the periodic nature of surveying. Let's try 1920s. Okay, so yeah, so you could compare 1880s with 1920s, or I could come a bit more up to date. Try 1990s. It doesn't seem to like the scale. Let's come out one. Nope, I should have tested a better spot before. Okay, but that gives you the principle. I could even select contemporary there, and you can do a comparison. So that's another little function. So the last thing I was going to show you, so we've looked at taking the web map service from between collections, and now I wanted to show you how you can bring in your own data. So let's come out of here, and I could show you this in any collection, but I thought I'd try it in aerial. In fact, let's try it in aerial Digimap. So let's open up aerial Roam. So hopefully you can now see that, you know, these Roam applications are pretty much the same between collections. So what we want to do now is, I mentioned I would bring in some data on wind farms. So we've seen the drawing tools before where you can actually annotate with text, lines and so on, but there's also an import tab here. So this is where you can bring in data that you've either collected in the field or collated, or perhaps sourced from somewhere else. These are the different formats: shapefile, KML from Google Earth, GPX tracks, spreadsheets, and GeoJSON. So what I've got, I'm going to select choose file, is wind farms in Scotland, and this is from Scottish Natural Heritage. So I've selected that. It must be in a zip file if it's a shapefile, and say import. So this should now add in different polygons. Okay, so these polygons all represent different wind farm locations across Scotland. And if I zoom in, we should be able to get an aerial view underneath that. Another function I haven't shown you is this transparency slider on the map window. So, you know, if you're bringing in your own data and you want to fade out the mapping a little bit, just so it stands out more, that's also possible. So I've added in the data, but if I select map information, it's not, I've selected the polygon, but that's not information from that wind farm polygon. This is information about the aerial map. You know, it's telling me that that particular area was flown in 2016. So by bringing in the data, I can't view any of the sort of attributes about the data. I don't know what wind farm that is, for example, or what status it is. I think the data distinguishes between some being proposed, some being installed, and so on. So I do also have, within the overlays in the web map service, I've got the web map service version of this data. So let's zoom out a little, and I'll turn off this Ordnance Survey web map service and turn on this SNH Renewables one. Okay, so what this shows me is I'm bringing in the data directly from Scottish Natural Heritage, and there are 4 different status: application, scoping, approval, and installed. Now I'm going to turn off, I beg your pardon, I'm going to delete all of those polygons so that we can see the web map service data that's been brought in more clearly. So if I just zoom in south of Glasgow, you can see we've got polygons of various different colours. So, you know, I suppose I'm just saying, if you have the possibility of either or, the web map service is potentially a more efficient way to add in and view the data that you're interested in. You're getting more current data, and depending on how it's set up at the supplier's end, you know, it may be more meaningful in terms of being able to delineate the different types.
Oh, I think Viv might have frozen there. She might be able to hear us. I think that covers everything. If anybody has any other questions, do go ahead and type them into the chat, and we'll see if we can answer.
Which Anna illustrated fantastically for us as well, with all her different maps.
Viv, are you still there? You froze for a wee while there. Viv, can you hear me? Right, Anna, can you hear me?
I can certainly hear you.
Okay, that's because not me. It's not me. This
would be an online thing if it wasn't for some technical. We have to allow for technical things to happen. That's part of life.
We do. We've had some real disasters actually where nothing worked. We had to abandon it. It was very embarrassing, but that's the way things seem to be at the moment. We all know about conference audio-visual stuff failures. It's not really any different from that, is it? I think Viv has managed to show us everything that she intended to. If anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat, and we'll see if we can answer them now. Other than that, I think it remains for us to say thank you very much to Anna for her time. We do value input from other people enormously. It makes a huge difference from just having me and Viv doing it all the time. It's nice to see some other people, and very interesting to hear what you're doing with the services we provide. We just provide a service. You're the ones who do some useful stuff with it. If anybody else wants to take part in a webinar, Viv will put out a call for some at some point. We will send you a transcript of the chat here. We will also send you a recording of the webinar. And there are all our YouTube videos. The visual recording will go on our YouTube channel, and we will email you links to it in due course. We've got couple more questions coming in. We've got a couple more questions. Hi, I'm hoping to use Digimap in dissertation next year to locate 2 areas where there are mass graves. How would I reference the map I use? In our help pages, Chloe, there is a bit of assistance on citing Digimap and a citation guide, which we can point you at. That's quite useful. The key point is that every map you produce should have the copyright statement with it. Referencing things in reference lists, of course, is slightly different, but as long as your maps have the right copyright statement on, that's the only bit that is legally required. Harriet says the OS name books relate to the first edition Ordnance Survey and the field notes by the surveyors. They have all sorts of weird and wonderful information in them. Brilliant, thanks, Harriet. And I think we have one more. I would like to import a shapefile in Drawing Tools, but the file format said it has to be in zip. Could you explain how to do that, please? Right, Keith. So if you look at your shapefile in, say, Windows Explorer, I'm guessing you're using Windows. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Let's do that one first. If you highlight all the different parts of the shapefile, so there should be an SHP file, a DBF file, probably an SHX file. There should be 5 or 6 of them. If you highlight them all and then right-click on them and say send to, you get the little menu that says send to, and the next option should give you one that says compressed file in brackets zip. So you really just need all the bits of the shapefile to be in one file, in one zip file, and then you can upload that zip file into Digimap. If that still doesn't help, or if you need some guidance, do drop us an email and I will write some step-by-step instructions with pictures if that helps. Lovely. Okay, good. That's great. I'm glad that's very straightforward. I think that's all for now then. Thank you very much to Anna. Thank you, Viv, too. Sorry we missed a little bit of you, Viv, but we know you're there. We will send transcripts and video recordings and so on by email, and hope you will come to the next one.